We're live. Yeah, exactly.
Little thing.
But it's so which is the topic switch to Zach first. First and then bring me on it. Bring me on it first, right? Because you have
yes, like, you know, it's one thing to work with the professional, but then you're still not students where you're I'm a big, like, I like today. The thing that attracted me to the PCO originally was like this idea of this community, right? Like local community. I've always been, you know, into how you support everything in the air. Very cool. I do my bag and
I'm boring it a little bit. It's not one of the perfect. So it's kind of harsh, but I like when she comes.
That's Rachel.
Oh no, there was no misinterpretation by the council.
So are we, what was,
experimenting with like for sure.
we're on YouTube Live there. There's a link on our website.
It's a great brand.
So we were thinking it cool, things is good for one.
Yeah.
Right. It's like
you saw it. Anyway, so looking forward to hearing you guys.
Well, I'm at the Canadian, so it's probably going to be tough to call.
Fried chicken dinner and stuff.
It's what the hundreds.
Oh, well, I left true smoke.
There we go. Wow, there you go. That's all the Excerpt.
And when they want to go, in their defense, they didn't quite know. We wanted to have everything.
Oh, you know what?
So, which that's a different thing, but so here is pretty well, you know. Oh yeah, so that's awesome. Yeah, it is. Technical. So I know, like I said, since I guess this, so at that time I said, hey, my favorite. She was like, you don't really have my
I don't want to show her one.
yeah, and then I was like, that's right. I'm reading Chapeskie. What's the worst gonna happen, right? That's right. And you know what? It's not true. I get it. Because who cares? It's not. You're going to get one performance, or you're going to try one taping or something. This can happen 100 times. You can do it 100 times over. So yeah, I have that whole thing now. Why not? Maybe part two the whole, but you know, it's just I think we're making sense. Well, here's my funny thing. That Yes Man movie with Jim Carrey. Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of things right about it. Yeah, that's, I would say no. Hell, I would say that. I would say no. It's like a great movie. Yeah, I really, a lot of it was like, yeah, no, we're not going to show that. No. I was hoping more of the group would come, but I kind of thought that people have to do it until we say, yeah, it was fun, or that was painless, and then more will come, right? Yeah. So I'm in the yeah, it's exactly. Especially like now, but I'm going to say that it's not really, but we can go a little, so I'm not going to rush my 10 minutes. Actually,
It looks so cool. Honestly, it's so cool.
My fault, there's nothing interesting in here, so I found one thing that maybe the 4 people in the room would like. So I thought, okay, it's 3 minutes.
Well, my wife processed me over.
Well, your books at least have some exciting stuff in there. So I didn't bring it. I was like, oh yeah, he just said to me, like, when you read 2, I said, it was not too interesting, but it's already 1. No, it's Steel. I'm interested in seeing how live streaming works. Well, I just do non-fiction distribution. Okay. So, local. Yeah, so they can, so they can be, yeah, like, you know, some people have good news about personalities Who cares?
Look at the research
That's always interesting. Oh, I agree with that. Look at it coming on Christmas. These guys wrote, this guy wrote these books in the 50s. That's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. And you're right, it changes sometimes.
That's my dad's really cool.
Lighting, I'm guessing. Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's really fun. I guess like for me, you know, like the fantasy genre kind of enables you to take that to, you don't have so many limitations, right? Yeah, make sure you keep track of everything.
Here's a character in the picture. Here's a character, she's in the Thompson.
Looks like it's on already.
All right,
Thank you, everybody.
We begin tonight by acknowledging that we live, work, and gather on the traditional territory of the Mississauga, Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada and Haldeman treaties. We recognize the contributions that Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made in shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. We recognize that our work in the arts and culture of this region and across Canada is connected to the history of this land and of the Indigenous peoples who deserve compassion, action, change, and reparations. We also recognize that our role in the ongoing work of truth and reconciliation, and as settlers, we must make measurable strides toward actionable change within our communities. The devastating effects of colonialism are ongoing, and we want to take this moment to bring mindfulness to our present participation. We are grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight and thank generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of the lands for thousands of years and continue to take care of them today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speak. Here's our org's first event as Fuse. We're really excited to welcome all of you here today. Everybody that's tuning in online, you guys are awesome. We're really excited to get going. I'd like to introduce, or we'd like to thank Matt and Jamie and everybody here at 13 Food and Beverage for having us this evening and for helping us out. You guys are amazing. And we're really looking forward to hearing some awesome spoken word from our local artists. So I'd like to introduce to you Daza, our head of programming here at Fuse, to introduce the first speaker. Thank you.
Hi guys, thanks so much, Roland. Welcome all. And today our first speaker is our own Rebecca Chapeskie.
Playing flute, alone at the window, the notes winding out into the twilight air, mingling together, forming an ethereal bridge over the chasm of the mind. One moment of distraction, one negative thought, and the bridge melts into tiny motes without so much as a tinkle of faint chimes. But gradually another bridge is formed, a staircase of slender ropes of scales, fragments of melody held together with an arpeggiated binding. Fragile as the very air through which it weaves, the band of sound guides to the light. As long as one holds on with a steady, gentle focus, not daring to look, even for an instant, into the yawning chasm below. Cemetery at daybreak. Noises in the night, flickers, faint and white, phantom forms floating, passing on. Over the flowing water, no reflection leaving. Into the hereafter, nary a note of weeping. The dead awake while the living sleep. Shrouding shadows sinking beneath gold gleaming grass. Dawn's fingers dancing to light the dreary past. Brilliant birdsong beaming on graves dug wide and deep. The living wake while the dead sleep. Sunrise. the sun rises. Bit by bit, the faint circle of light burgeoning below the horizon stretches across the landscape. Bit by bit, the world awakens. The pale gray hand of dawn streaks silently through the shadows, flitting fine fingers of light into the tangled tapestry of trees, tenderly touching the bent blades of grass, creeping through a crack in the curtains, and sliding in a slant upon the floor, preparing to break the repose of the night. Imperceptibly tussling the sleeper's hair, it whispers, in tones too faint for the human ear, "The day is beginning." Too faint to hear, but still perceived, an urgent sense within their dreams, calling, enticing, coaxing. The sheets rustle, the mind is roused. All around, the air stirs in anticipation, while the earth weeps tears of joy, dampening with drops of dew. At last, the sun arises. "Good morning, my love," he beams, his rays tenderly kissing the earth, drying her tears. "Good morning," she replies, with a radiant countenance, shining with the splendor of reflected light.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Next we have Paul Langan.
So just a little introduction. I was researching a book about the history of opera in what was Berlin, Kitchener, Cambridge, Gaul, and I came across a very interesting opinion piece from 1904. And basically back then, opera and opera houses, there was one just a couple blocks away, and there was one up in Berlin. And opera was a highbrow type of entertainment. And unfortunately, things like vaudeville and minstrel shows came that were a lowbrow form of entertainment. So this opinion piece from the Chronicle Telegraph, 1903 in Berlin, says it all. The stage, when used for the purpose of representing intellectual, moral, and historical compositions, may be said to occupy a sphere of usefulness. The instant, however, it becomes invaded by incorrect deportment or anything that detracts from its dignity, the usefulness of the stage is gone. And instead of being a benefit, its tendency is to degrade. There is no source from which the sage suffers more than the introduction of what is properly known as vaudeville in minstrel performances. Any opera which his respectable gentleman cannot attend in the company with his wife and family is a kind of calculated to debase rather than elevate. The kind of drama most liberally patronized may be taken as a fair criterion of the moral and intellectual stamina of a community. In places where a high standard of ethics and education exists, any troupe that would subvert or reduce the dignity of the stage would be discontinuous, and this soon started out. To say the least, some attention is due from the authorities in a corporation in regulating the standard of entertainment provided to its citizens. Shows that are sufficiently over the boundary from the lewd to escape being amendable to the law should be discontinuous. Theater managers are likely to take a commercial view of their business and secure the kind of entertainments that are likely to be best patronized in order to make them pay. If a low order of shows are brought into town, the community has itself to blame because in the absence of a depraved appetite, such shows could not exist. Let the opera citizens of Berlin patronize the higher order of drama and the class of entertainment, provided it will improve. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul. Next we have Richard Stevens.
Hi everybody, it's great to be here tonight. I'd like to thank Zach for organizing this event and everyone else behind the scenes. I'd also like to thank Paul Langan for bringing this event to the attention of the Cambridge Authors Group. Very much appreciated. Tonight I'll be doing a reading from my epic fantasy novel, Keeper of the Jewel. It's book 1 in the High Cliff Guardian series, and since this book is so big, I'm not strong enough to carry it for 10 minutes, so I'm going to put it down and read it off here. This excerpt is from the chapter entitled Earth Blood. And present in the scene is the protagonist, Odling Wise. She's a 17-year-old spoiled princess who has been exiled to the dragon colony at Highcliffe for safekeeping. Also appearing as High Wizard Elfin, the one charged with their care. Elfin is a crotchety old goblin who has lived for well over 7 centuries, and he is, to say the least, not pleased to be fettered with a princess. Elfin watched the Princess of South March over the brim of a stone goblet, savoring the steaming effervescence of the spicy concoction he had brewed with the aid of the magical fire burning within a ring of ornate stones. Resting on a low stone bench within a small chamber carved into the mountain rock, its roof not high enough for Odling to walk upright, she tried to still her fear of the odd creature. Even seated, she had to bend so as not to scrape her head on the rough-hewn ceiling. The chamber eerily illuminated by glowing crystals embedded into the rock around her. Odling sniffed at the goblet she had been given. Its contents exuded a heady, earthy aroma that turned up her nose. She waited for her host to sip at his before working up the nerve to do likewise. Following his lead, she slurped enough to taste it, the liquid tart and hot in her mouth. Daring to swallow, she twisted in what she could only surmise was an ugly expression, for her face twisted. Though she prepared herself for anything the strange brew might offer, the pungent afterbite was nothing like she had experienced before. Pointed yellow teeth glinted across the magical firebed as Elfin smiled, the grin making him look more nefarious than usual. Odling didn't think she would ever look at the High Wizard without revulsion. Her gaze on her hands wrapped around the goblet, she appreciated the warmth infused in the stone composition, but she could feel the wizard's beady red eyes burrowing into her. Swallowing her discomfort, she cast her attention to the glittering gemstones radiating soft light. Is this the Crystal Cavern? Elfin stared long and hard, taking a deep pull on his drink. He placed it on the ground beside him. What if I were to say yes? Odling met his soul-searching gaze and shrugged. I guess I'd say it's not what I expected. Were you not taught about Highcliffe as an elfling? His cynical gaze examined her from head to toe. Or perhaps you aren't old enough yet. Of course I am, but she sighed, barely able to think straight. Sitting alone in a cramped burrow inside a mountain wore on her frayed nerves. The events of the day seeped into her thoughts, haunting her. Accompanied by the horrific noises of elves suffering and dying a torturous death, she couldn't escape the ghastly visions of their burning bodies. She doubted she'd ever get the stench of burnt flesh from her nostrils. If Elfin suspected her turmoil, he never let on. His intense glare implored her to elaborate. I wasn't a good student. My mind was always elsewhere. Elfin held her stare a while longer. When he finally nodded, Odling was sure his demeanor had hardened even further. You know who you are, do you not? The question threw her. A nervous chuckle preceded her reply. Of course, I'm Odling Wise, the first princess of South March. You have a sister then? His query dripped with sarcasm. She could tell he already knew the answer. Well, no, but the wizard's overpowering presence cowed any chance she had of carrying on a normal conversation with the creature. It was like he judged her every word she spoke. Then you're the only heir to the little throne. I guess. No, never guess. That is twice you've done that since you sat down. As a future leader, you must know. Always. Even when you don't, you must profess that you do. The masses expect this. Never display weakness. Lead by example or lose your way. Try as she might, Roland couldn't disengage from that penetrating gaze. She swallowed, not knowing whether to speak or not. Elfin picked up his goblet and drank deeply, closing his eyes in appreciation of the soothing effect it appeared to have on him. Without knowing why she did so, Roland did likewise. The liquid burned going down, as if searing her throat and boiling within her stomach. But even as she was about to cry out in shock, a wave of calm overcame her. She searched the dark liquid, wondering what the wizard had put in it. Elfin's unsettling grin grew wider. Your first taste of earth blood. If you prove unworthy, it will kill you. Stunned, the stone goblet slipped from Roland's fingers and broke on the ground in front of her. The viscous liquid sizzling and smoking as it seeped into the stone floor of Elfin's little chamber. Roland jumped to her feet in alarm, but a hard knock on the back of her head dropped her back to the low bench, the rough stone ceiling unforgiving. You are the one King claimed. You are the one King claimed you are. Elfin's raspy voice hissed, nodding his oversized head in satisfaction. Else you'd be lying on the ground struggling to take your last breath. Only Dragonborn may consume earth blood and live to speak of its nasty taste. Rubbing the back of her head, a stickiness met Odling's probing fingers as he inspected the length of a painful lesion to her scalp. She glared at the wizard. You mean you might have knowingly killed me? Wait until Mother finds out. Why, she'll... So incensed, she couldn't come up with a fitting punishment. She'll thank me for carrying out her order. Elfin said as a matter of fact. Odling's jaw dropped. Flummoxed, she sputtered incoherently, unable to articulate her angered thoughts. Aye, your mother has what it takes to be a true leader. But I could have died. Her anger waned as his previous words sunk in. Only Dragonborn may consume her blood and live to speak of the nasty taste that leaves from her mouth. Elfin shrugged his indifference. If you had died, it would have saved me a lot of trouble. In the uncomfortable moments that followed, the immutable silence of the wizard's den pressed in around her. Vulnerable and alone, Odling's knees shook of their own accord, bent at a sharp angle to allow her to sit on the hard bench without toppling over or getting too close to the magical fire, burning silently between them. What did this strange creature mean by only the Dragonborn would survive? Surely it couldn't be referring to her. Despite the heat radiating from the circle of room-etched stones of the small fire pit, she shivered. Elfin's raspy voice made her nerves jump. To answer your question, no, this is not Crystal Cavern. I'm not worthy to claim that as my own. Only the dragons and their handlers are permitted access to the ancient lair for any appreciable length of time. Odling fought hard to maintain his gaze. So, there are still dragon riders then? The goblin's face twisted into a sneer. What if I said yes? Would that surprise you? Odling held his intense stare, but couldn't keep it locked. She lowered her gaze to the mystical flames. No, I guess not. It's just that... There you go, guessing again. Elfin growled, his eyes narrowing. That's 3 times. There is no allowance for maybe where you're concerned. You're either surprised or you're not. He sat back, a deep scowl on his wide mouth. It is, as I feared. You're weak. You don't possess the mentality of a high-cliff guardian. Guessing is a fault that will never bode well. It leads to hesitation, a condition that gives rise to unforeseen difficulties for one who is destined to rule the realm. It's unfortunate this quality thrives in you. Your blood test isn't always conclusive. I fear my faith in Kay's judgment has led me astray. She could feel his beady eyes bore into the top of her head. Thankful her long locks prevented Elfin from seeing the hurt twitching her facial muscles, she dared not wipe at her eyes and give away the fact that she was on the verge of crying. She was so scared. I'll make the arrangements to have you escorted back to your uncle on the morrow. The High Wizard's low growl set her nerves on end. Leave me. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next we have Roland Thompson.
Thanks everybody for allowing me to do this. I don't really read out loud, but thanks. First I'm going to read a poem, and then I'll read a chapter from the story that I'm working on. The poem's called Saturday Last. I get paid to watch metal rust 12 hours at a time. 42 tons of Detroit steel, dying a little bit every day. During the light of day, I live the rest of my life, 12 hours at a time, 7 to 7, 6 days a week for the past 14 years. Saturday last, the moon was full and blue. The world was quiet. The metal shone for the first time. 16 years ago, I had a wife, Jamie, who believed in me and my dreams. I dreamt of being a famous writer. 14 years ago, I gave up the dream to watch metal rust. 12 years ago, she finally gave up on me too. I remember her begging me to quit, and I laughed, walked up to the car. I'm not sure what I think. I'm pretty sure that's the day dreams died, and our love died with him. Oddly enough, I don't remember her leaving. Just one day she wasn't there. Saturday last, the moon was full and blue, and the steel shone. Tears came to my eyes with the realization that the last 14 years, I spent 7 solid watching metal rust. The last movie I saw was Return of the Jedi, and Jamie thought I could have written it. Saturday last, 7 a.m. on a clear sunny morning. At a relaxing 75 degrees, I wrote for the first time. My hands shook, and I grabbed the pen, then steadied when I grabbed the paper. I quit, is all I wrote. So this is an excerpt from a story I'm working on. Is named Bobby. He's a badass. But you know, monsters are made, not born. This is called Into the Wild, this chapter. Less than a week after the funeral, Bobby left home. Rick had moved back into the house, and the physical abuse resumed once more. Now that Brady was gone, there was no one to protect. And at 15, Bobby didn't have to. He didn't have to take it either. Bobby knew a few people lived on the streets, and although they didn't look happy, he figured it was better than home. The first couple of days were hard. All he had was a couple pairs of jeans, a few shirts, socks, underwear, and his writing book. Whatever was going to happen next, he had more control now than he ever had. Went to the places where I saw young people hang out and tried to blend in, but it wasn't easy. Bob didn't much like people he knew, let alone strangers. He watched what people did, caught on quickly, did what they did, and saw how things worked. He found out where to get food, the people to watch out for, and the people who were not necessarily friendly, but kind. Got into his first street fight on the 4th day, on his own. He won, but it wasn't easy. His opponent was bigger, but underestimated Bobby. That mistake cost him. Bobby had fought a lot in school, and he'd taken karate for a time until the step monster just pulled him out for punishment. He liked karate, he was good at it, and it came to him easily. The discipline also quieted the always angry mind. To be good, he had to focus on his training. And the sensei told him, if he got the one fight, he'd stop teaching him.
Bobby had gone 9 months without a single fight. Not that the opportunity wasn't there, but he just had to avoid it. It was the longest stretch since, well, the Frank incident. He had begun to write poetry to clear his mind. Sometimes it helped, sometimes it was just words. There was a girl in his class who had been bothering him for a poem. He didn't want to write her a poem. She was persistent. So he did. It was not what she expected. Brea took the folded paper, gushing as she opened it. And as she read, the look on her face fell. Her face scrunched into this angry fist and exploded. "You think this is funny?" she screamed. She threw the paper at the floor, stood with her hands tight, fists on her hips. A friend of hers picked up the paper without Brea knowing and began to read aloud. "Your eyes are like diamonds, baseball diamonds with bags in every corner," and began to howl with laughter. Brea snatched the paper from her and pushed her away. The other girls around her burst into laughter, pointing at Brea and giggling. She stormed off. "You'll be sorry." No. Throughout the day, Bobby heard that Brea's big brother was going to fight Bobby after school. Most of the kids who knew Bobby were jeering him. "It's nice knowing you, Bobby. Can I have your comics when Ronnie kills you?" Always followed with laughter. After school, Rodney was already at the doors waiting for Bobby. Rodney was a known tough guy. That didn't bother Bobby as much. He just wanted to get out of this mess. Bobby hoped that Rodney would be understanding. He wasn't. "I'm gonna rip your head off, you little prick," he yelled, and moved forward towards Bobby. Brea was standing behind him cheering, "Get him, Rodney, get him." Bobby threw his hands up. Wait, I don't want to fight," he pleaded. "You shouldn't have embarrassed her then, douchebag." And he said, putting his fist up, and Bobby stepped back. "Wait, you didn't want to fight? The poem was a stupid idea, but she just kept bugging." Rodney came in for a strike, but Bobby moved out of the way. Rodney was bigger, older, and probably stronger. Rodney threw a punch that Bobby easily evaded. His sensei would be mad if he couldn't get out of this. "Come on, scaredy cat, fight," Rodney ordered. He threw another punch and Bobby evaded. Looking around, Bobby saw the circle of his classmates. Some he thought as friends, another he barely knew. They're all cheering, "Fight, fight, fight." Bobby was about to try and talk his way out of it one last time. Then Rodney woke up the anger that slept in Bobby. "Come on, you little bitch," he said. Bobby stopped moving so suddenly that Rodney nearly walked into him. Jumped back in surprise. Bobby was stone still, the hidden rage consuming him. Rick was always calling Bobby little bitch. Rodney had just had the misfortune of bringing the rage to the surface. Rodney shrugged his shoulders, smirked, and came in for a strike that would never happen. Bobby sidestepped, threw a snap kick at Rodney's head. It connected in his right cheek. Rodney staggered. The crowd quieted. Tears came to Rodney's eyes, and Bobby moved forward for the first time. "Come on, Rodney. Let's see you tear my head off." Cracked his neck. Rodney wiped his face and grunted, took a step forward. So did Bobby. Bobby threw a crescent kick that connected with Rodney's face. It wasn't a strong kick, but it made Rodney move and shake his head. The kick reminded Bobby of a scene from a movie he loved called Billy Jack. Both the main character and Bobby were mixed native blood, and Bobby identified with the struggles the character was going through. Bobby moved in again, but this time punched Rodney in the face harder. The connection was solid, and Rodney staggered, but Bobby didn't let up. He threw two left hooks, both connecting solidly in a straight punch to Rodney's face. His nose exploded, and Rodney fell to the ground. Bobby stood over him, hands clenched in a fist, daring him to get up. The crowd wasn't chanting now, they were silent. Everyone was watching Bobby like he was some new, unidentifiable thing. The crowd parted and the teacher came to the center. From the surprised look on her face, she was expecting to say Bobby from Rodney, not the other way around. "Go home, there's nothing to see here," the teacher ordered. Bobby looked from the huddled bully on the ground to the teacher. It was Mrs. Larkin. She's a grade 7 teacher. Some kids still lingered. She turned on him. I said, go home, or do I need to start calling parents? The crowd began to fall away a bit quicker then. Miss Larkin reached for Bobby. He stepped away. Don't touch me, he said. I finished it. It's over. Miss Larkin paused. Hey, you come here, young man, she said, reaching for Bobby again. He said, I told you don't touch me. I'm going home. It's over. He said, and they left. Ronnie's still on the ground, face and shirt bloody. He was seated now, and Brea was comforting him. Miss Larkin stood over them both. I'll see you two in the office, right now, she ordered. Brea looked towards Bobby. What? I said now, Miss Larkin said. Helper brought him to his feet. The nurse is still here, and she'll look at that nose. She said she led him to the office. Miss Larkin looked over her shoulder in the direction of Bobby. He was little more than a speck on the edge of her vision now. She turned back to the siblings and marched in the office. After that first fight, Bobby had a bit of a rest from trouble. Kept to himself and stayed clear of places where it was likely to be a problem. He began to have a loose friendship with a few people. Most were homeless kids like himself. Others were much older who seemed to have fallen through the cracks of society. One day in particular, he watched an older couple at the local mission getting lukewarm coffee and day-old danishes. He couldn't help but wonder how they got there. They must have gone to school, worked. They couldn't have been here on the streets their whole lives, could they? He had seen them several times, and often with another older man and a young kid, younger than he was anyways. The kid's name was Richard, but he had heard him referred to as Richard the Lionheart, which always made him chuckle a bit. Richard was not only young for his age, but small as well. As he watched the couple, he saw a kid he knew only too well. His name was Bruce. He seemed to think himself a tough guy. Right? Bruce was the kind of kid that tended to pick on people either smaller than him or much older than him. Right? People were unable to defend themselves anyhow. He saw Bruce walk past the couple and do a quick flex in their direction. The older woman flinched, but the man stood instantly between Bruce and his wife. What are you going to do, you old geezer? He asked. Just step away, young man. There's no need for violence, the man answered back. His voice shook, but he stood ground. Bruce moved towards him, all types of menace in his stance. Bobby stood up to make his way over to the couple. But now, seemingly out of nowhere, Richard was there. Knock it off, Bruce. No one's bothering you. Leave him alone. Richard was maybe 3/4 the size of Bruce and weighed about 40 pounds less. He stood his ground as well. His voice didn't shake at all. Bruce looked at the elderly couple in the small defender and laughed. And just what the hell are you going to do, half pint? He jeered. Without missing a beat, Richard responded, probably get my ass kicked, but you're going to know I was here. Bruce thought that was interesting and decided to do another quick flex. But Richard didn't flinch. He stood his ground. Bobby had seen enough. A tough guy, Bobby said. Bruce whirled to the new arrival. Do you see me? He asked Bobby. Bruce looked perplexed at the change of events. Hey, I said, did you see me? Bobby asked again. Bruce's face went through several expressions before settling on a sneer. Yeah, I see you. Why? He said, focusing on Bobby. Because I don't want you to go back and tell your buddies you were sucker punched. Bobby said as he delivered a solid Superman punch to the boy's face. With all the grace of a butterfly with new legs, he went down, arms swinging wildly as he fell back, landed his ass in the mud puddle from the night before. He sputtered and flailed and looked about, only to see Bobby standing over him, fist clenched. These are my friends. If you bother them again, I won't just knock you on your ass, I'll knock your teeth out. Are we clear? Bruce just blinked at him. Hey, I said, are we clear? Yeah, man, whatever. Let's just have fun with them. I wasn't even going to do anything. Bobby smiled and turned to the trio. Hi, my name's Bobby. He put his hand up. Hey, I thought you said they were your friends. Bruce said, trying to get out of the puddle. Oh, they are. We just haven't met yet.
Thanks so much, Randy.
Yeah.
Next we have Alex Gage.
Sorry to read the map down, or best keep it up?
Best keep it, so my problem.
Pat. I was so proud of my little amount of change. It meant I could buy coffee without feeling bad that I have to do without it. And I could keep something warm and comforting inside me when I was driving it. God knows what hour for God knows what length under God knows what conditions. God knows what complications and God knows what route. Or not. Maybe enough just to keep me awake, just because it was warm, something favorite. Things would maybe be different now. His name was Pat. He said he had Tourette's and schizophrenia. That was fine, we're all people. And his foot was ruined. He was wearing flip-flops and one sandal barely fit over the swollenness. I asked him what had happened at one point, but he missed that question. It really didn't matter. That was a question for the hospital. All that mattered was that he couldn't walk any further and would need a hospital. He said he was a good guy. He took his meds, but he'd been with that for 3 weeks. Now he'd get somewhere he could get his meds. And later, I thought it was so fortunate that I'm so warm out today. Humidity, it was 40 degrees at the end of September, and the calendar was beating the leaves down. He asked my name and I told him, and he remembered my name as we talked. Someone said the sweetest sound in anyone's ear is the sound of someone telling them their own name. I made a mission not to forget Pat. He asked my age, congratulated me, and said that he wasn't gay, that there wasn't anything wrong with being gay, but that I was real good looking, and he hoped I got a hobby, and that I didn't have to call him sir all the time. He also told me that that dumb gas station attendant came outside and stood, dumbly, when Pat had first walked up to my car, when he had first asked how I was, first asked my name. Pat said it looked like I was doing well, had a nice car, and told me who he was, some of his problems, and how hard it was out here. Then the gas station attendant walked back inside. Pat said those guys were done with him, tired of him, but they knew him. They were good guys. And he did work for them, and they lent him money sometimes. Pat said a lot of things. He could have walked to where he wanted to go, he said. He walked as far, probably farther, crying in and out of pain as we talked, pacing back and forth. But something had beaten him. Pat just could not do it. Maybe it was the skunk that had chattered and hissed at him, raised its tail over there, down over there in the darkness. But he just couldn't. But Pat had a habit of assuming the best of people. Every favor he asked, to drive him to the place he could stay, for a tenner, he asked and you didn't answer. He already knew you were an angel. And it made him weep with gratitude and love. We're all people. Pat thanked me profusely. I hadn't said anything. He came inside with me when I went in to pay for the gas with cash. But we got in the car. He said he could direct me. Turns out it was only 2 blocks away and a short left in the old residential blocks that were so short across. I told him on the way I could give him a drive, but I couldn't do the 10. He pleaded for 5. Said 10 could give him the extra to get some chips or something. But without at least 5, he couldn't stay at the flop. He had 30, but Pat needed 5 more. The gas attendant, not the dumb one, the one who let him use the phone, had let him talk to the owner of the place. He was also a real asshole. The next guy would have the money. He wouldn't let him stay without the 5. I said, let me come in. I'm sure you can get a room. I
hoped he'd get a hospital and some medicine. He said, no offense, but my offer to bargain with the guy wouldn't get me anywhere. The next person would have the money. He said I meant that I'd go in and pay the difference for his room tonight. I get burned pretty frequently on these off-chance events of charity. My skin heals well, but even so, I don't like it when the choice is to take chances on people or do nothing at all, so, I'd just rather cut out the middleman when I'm helping. He really didn't want to go in, though. He said I could watch him go in. He wasn't going to come out. He wasn't going back outside tonight, not tonight. He couldn't walk. We're all people. It said when Pat told me that I didn't know what this meant, that it was for me to do this for guys like him. Sorry, that I didn't know what it meant, what it was for me to do this for guys like him. He said he'd do chores for me if I gave him my number. He'd do whatever I wanted. He said not to worry about it. We got in the car. He startled me. It was just his Tourette's. He apologized and asked if I knew what Tourette's was. He must have noticed me start. I told him I did, and it was okay. I was only started. It really caught me off guard. I didn't notice him tick yet. I wondered if maybe it had something to do with the confined space. It was like a combination of a cry, a sneeze, a cough, a moan, a yell. It was a scared, agonized sound. Not scary at all. Unless it was because it was such a human sound. It was familiar. I dropped him off, pulling up a little farther than where he told me. I opened my little amount of change in the compartment, started counting to get an idea of the volume and denominations, and then gathered up as many coins with my 2 fingers as I could quickly do, placing them into his palms, making sure I gave him what should at least be a little more than that $5. I guess it's 6.5, 7 and change, something like that. Enough to make sure he wasn't getting sent back out that door on foot. On that foot. It was infected with something. Maybe swollen with an injury, maybe infected and swollen with brokenness and mileage, with restless distress, disease, infection, uneasiness, maybe just with an unwillingness to die in a world of skunks and angels. Take all your change, he said a few times, and I gave him most of it, but asked, don't mind if I keep just a little for myself. It's enough to get a coffee for a long drive home. Of course, he said, we're all people. He told me to get home safe, and I told him to take care of that foot. He said he would, and I said goodnight, and he thanked me and wished me well, and shook hands as he got out. Later, I told my mother about this. She asked that I'd met a man named Pat with Tourette's and schizophrenia. Then my brother asked to shave his head. After he had asked us over and over again if he should do it, I said do it. And I agreed when he asked me to do it for him. After all, we're all people, Pat said. He said, what could you do with $5? Pat had asked me this when I told him after filling up my car that night with gasoline, because I felt it would be too expensive to do it in the morning. And I had a long way to drive, and I had to drive it early and drive it fast, and I was out of fuel myself. But I told him I could drive him to that place he thought he knew, but that he couldn't go. But I still couldn't give him 10. I considered his point. Not helping him was never an option. I just wanted that extra 5 for food, for a bag of chips. He really didn't care about the 10. It was the 5 he needed to be inside. To be inside the care of angels and sheltered under shingles and beaten walls and above floors and between mattresses and sheets and pillows and from that world of skunks. The white, kind of crumbly looking house he pointed out as such. Remember what he called it in his description. It was unmarked, with just the light on, one light. I didn't see him come out as I drove away, trusting he'd be okay for tonight, hoping he got a hospital and meds soon. Wasn't getting taken advantage of by anyone, counting himself and all his ailments. He called me Alex. He said, what can I do with $5? Pat assured me, and I called him Pat. I drove him over as we talked, and I gave him my little amount of change in the compartment, minus what I hope was enough for that coffee. Also, I wish I'd just given it all to him. But I hope I did a good thing.
so much, Alex. Next we have Roland.
Hi, everybody. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak tonight, and I am. It's too bad that I'm the last one because this one's a little bit sad, but I hope you enjoy it anyways. Why am I a refuge? The broken ones drawn to me, taken into my arms, my head, my heart, my very soul. They need help, care, love. They need me. I know little of who they are, why they are broken, but I accept their burden as my own. The wounded animal in distress, crying from the bushes. Wouldn't you help? And why am I in prison? My own broken self trapped, never shown an embrace, never taken care of. I need help, care, love, but I deny myself. I know myself better and better each day, but I shut myself out. Stuck shivering cold in the basement. Doesn't anyone know I'm here? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brea. I think it's interesting you mentioned that you're going last, because I should mention, I was going to read my poetry today, but I know I told a few of you my laptop I stored all my poetry on kind of died on me 2 days ago, and I kind of might have lost all my data, but I was thinking I might have one memorized, I think.
Yes.
I have to remember it, I think. It's a bit short, but here goes. It's called Into the Night. Into the night I embark, to the eternal, the tree flies dark. The gnarled boughs offer shade, on the tenebrous path I wind away. Crumbling skies high above, distant memories, the fluttering dove. Shadows within, shadows without, without a shadow, little to doubt. Never to endeavor, nonetheless, however, this land of forever, never will I sever. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks to everybody for coming out tonight, for tuning in on our YouTube Live. Check us out at fuseart.org. You can see our next event on Saturday, October the 23rd, Learn to Dance Night at fuseart.org/programming. Thanks. Take care.